name is Herc, I'm known as Herc, and I'm going to present a AI for Executives session. Me, myself, I'm originally from Trinidad and Tobago. Came from a tech family and migrated to the US in 2001. Worked on a lot of telecom systems, designing his 4G network in the US, when their cell phone was the first IoT device. Did a lot of telecom stuff, went to Silicon Valley, did my own startup, did some big data stuff, and been building AI products since 2011. Filed an AI patent 2015, issued in 2017 around churn, and then moved into what I call the real economy outside of Silicon Valley, where the rubber meets the road. Worked in smart cities sector, also worked in ed tech and supply chain. And today, I'm the founder of Heft IQ, and we are an LLM-driven analytics platform targeted towards companies in the supply chain. And today, what I want to kind of impress upon you is that some of you may be executives, some of you may be building products to be sold into organizations. And I think it's very important to understand the persona of the company and the persona of the executives that exist within those companies in order to drive revenues for your own companies. And executives, their personas are driven by executive compensation. Executives are compensated by a number of factors, which include the financial performance of the organization. That includes top-line revenue, that includes cost savings, that includes margins, and that includes cash flow. And so in approaching any enterprise, if you are selling into the organization, you need to understand who you're selling to, who's the buyer, who's experiencing the pain point, who's authorized to sign the check. If you don't understand these, it'll be a very difficult task. Sometimes it's very easy to think you're going to sell into the IT group. And a lot of corporate entities have IT groups who've grown up in the age of information technology. And a lot of times the IT group is not the buyer or the person experiencing the pain. Right? So it's very important for you to understand who's experienced the pain, who's the buyer, who's authorized to sign the check, and who's the user. Right? So today what I want to do is kind of present to both those who may be executives and those selling into organizations on this concept called time. Right? And the title of the talk is Reclaiming Time in the Age of Intelligence, where time was a constraint and it's now a strategic asset. Peter Drucker said time is a scarce resource. Unless it's managed, nothing else can be managed. But then it begs the question, what is time? Could you tell me the time? Could you tell me the time? Chris, what's the time? Right? 11:50, where? It depends. It depends. So the time, it depends. Yeah? And it depends for us today living under the Gregorian calendar, right? The Pope Gregory, the 13th, moved away from the Julian calendar into the Gregorian calendar, and that's what the Western world lives in right now. And then the concept of time depends on your location, latitude and longitude particularly. So then let's talk about time as a capitalist variable. Right? 1776, the economist Adam Smith wrote a book called Wealth of Nations. In 1776, in America, was the Declaration of Independence was signed. Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations, gave rise to capitalism and the growth of the industrialized world. And in the industrialized world, it's a three-legged stool made up of time as a construct, labor as a construct, and capital as a construct, where capital is equal to time it takes to get something done, multiplied by the level of effort, labor, right? And I'm going to stitch the relevancy of and the impact of why that is important to understand today. Let's dig a little bit into the cultural constructs of time, right? It's very important for us, I think today, everyone to understand time. What is time? You see on the top left, there's cultures who have very different concepts of time. In the Eastern cultures and certain traditional cultures, time is cyclical in nature. It's not linear. Versus bottom right, the culture we live in today, most of us, time is very linear and monochromic. In Eastern cultures, there's a concept, like in Hinduism, there's a concept called dharma and karma. That in itself is grounded in the cyclical nature of the understanding of life, which is not linear. In other cultures, like the Andes cultures, there's a tribe called the Amara. They understand the past to be in front of them, which is very deterministic, and the future, which is undetermined, to be behind them. So when we start to understand the concept of time and how time connects into this concept of capitalism, you start understanding what AI, artificial intelligence, what is really being impacted, how it's going to impact us, our perception of life, our perception of how we formulate societies, and what the implications of that is to the future generations. So now we've come about the AI revolution, and we hear pitches about AI tools, AI agents, etc., etc. And what is actually happening is now the time it takes to get to an insight has collapsed to near zero. The level of effort to get to insight from a corporate level is now near zero. And so the equation, the capitalism equation, capital is equal to time by the level of effort, has collapsed. Historically, time was, in the Western world as we live it here, the linear version. Time was organized around a concept of completion of task, right? In the early days of pre-industrial, work was task-oriented. There was not a concept of a clock. You would go out into the fields and you will work, and there was not a concept of a clock. And as things progressed through the industrial world, the time clock became a marker of productivity. And so you start formulating factories where you say 6 widgets is equal to 1 hour, 12 widgets equal to 2 hours, and you start formulating this concept of productivity. And that bled into the industrial world, into the factories of the world. And now we're seeing with AI, the concept of time has changed. Now, when I moved to Silicon Valley in 2011, big data became the big rage because storage became cheap. It allowed you to aggregate more data in an organization over time. So it gave you more context for the decisions to be made as an executive. Then with the advent of GPUs, the concept of compute complexity became cheaper, so now it was easier to get a larger context for understanding at a faster rate, which reduced the time to insights. And so there's core pieces of technology that has enabled capabilities that now are changing the behaviors of organizations and societies, right? Our company, we primarily sell to a lot of organizations within the supply chain space. And what we notice, and me being part of executive teams, it's that IT departments are very resistive to new technology, culturally. Why? IT departments grew up in the age of information technology, grew up in the age of the rise of the internet, the rise of devices, laptops, cell phones. And their job was a back office function to ensure that the business of the company was sustained. Their job was not to drive revenue. Their job was to ensure that the operations continued, whether that's cybersecurity, whether it's working remote, whether it's creating some internally facing applications, etc. Their job was not to drive revenue. And so what you have happening is a large sector of the American society has IT departments that are now being asked to innovate and drive revenues. So there's a huge cultural hurdle to be overcome on a corporate level when the IT team is tasked with doing development that they've never been tasked with. Now you have tech-forward companies coming in to sell into the enterprise and executive leaders not having sufficient technical background, pointing them towards the IT groups who are already resistive, who may not have the skill sets to assess what it is you're presenting as well as the implications. And so it creates inertia. Your sales pipeline starts dragging out, and it's a tougher hurdle to overcome when your advocate, your target advocate is the IT department. And so organizations need to start from the top with executive level education, from the boardroom. The boards need to be educated. The executive teams need to be educated on the implications of the capabilities that AI presents. There are whole companies designed around some one capability that now can be done by an AI tool. I'm not talking about piece of their business, the entire business, whole business, right? And I can show you example. Grammarly's whole business is designed around a capability that is now widely available. Their whole companies, their whole business is designed around scanning documents and making sense of documents, now being done by the LLMs. Your entire business has now become a capability of an AI tool or an AI agent. So the urgency around the executives and the boards understanding that the way the organization was designed is no longer relevant. And as Jack Dorsey said, companies need to have multiple founding moments. Organizations are connected to their customers and they solve a pain point for their customers. Now organizations need to understand what is the value add in the age of AI to our existing customers who we already have a relationship with. What are the revenue streams that need to occur? What are the additional problems to be solved for my customer, regardless of if it's in the existing wheelhouse or not? Right? One day, a lot of the retail food companies had one specific name, right? I saw TKE was called ThyssenKrupp Elevators. Their business was elevators. Now TKE represents an acronym that allows them to get into other domains and verticals. Companies are going to have to rename themselves so that they stay relevant in the world that we live in today. Right? So it's not sufficient to take your existing business model, your existing customer base, automate some piece of workflow within your organization and think that you're going to win. You're not. You have to rethink and understand that your customer relationship is of high value, sufficient enough that the customer will trust you to trial some new product for a problem that still exists at the customer. companies are going to have to reinvent themselves. It is not sufficient to incrementally add value to your existing customers. It's going to cause pricing pressures on the way things are priced. Per seat pricing is going to collapse in the age of layoffs. As organizations become smaller, per seat pricing becomes less relevant. You're now going to have to challenge yourself and your business model in understanding, how do I solve a problem for my customer in a way that creates a win-win and a sticky factor over the long term for me and my customers. Now per seat pricing is now a barrier to your application being pervasively used within the organization that gets it that sticky factor. So it's not just the company itself, it's how we think about revenue models. It's going to also have to fundamentally change. Right? We've made at Hefty IQ a bet that the cost of inference is going to go down over time. Why are you charging by how many questions being asked, how many people are using your product? These are what I call Gen 2 pricing models that exist in a SaaS world. And in a SaaS world, a lot of value was driven using UIs, user interfaces. Right? Our clients, we walk into our clients, we ask 2 questions, we show them the agents creating the insights on the dashboards, and they sign up. There's no UI per se. Because the cycles of getting a feature out using the old paradigm of software engineering, it takes too long to get value to the user. Right? So one hangover from that era was BI and dashboards, business intelligence tools. One day someone said, hey, there's a lot of data trapped. If you think about organizations as a living entity in a tree, a lot of data is trapped in the roots of your organization. It's trapped in your CRM, it's trapped in your ERP, it's trapped in all your systems. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to create these amazing appliances called data warehouses, and we're going to pour everything into that data warehouse, and then you can figure out the rest and put something on top of it and get your insights. Then organizations said, okay, what do we need to do next? We need to get the data out from this large data lake, this large data warehouse. I think we need some people called data analysts and data engineers. Okay, and then what are you going to see on top of all this? Well, we can create some dashboards. Remember the days of Excel and charts? We can create something like that. And that gave rise to companies like Tableau and Power BI. And they said, okay, we're going to build the best visual layer so you can take a peep into what your data is showing you. They said, but I still can't make sense of it. Okay, you need one more job function. Call it data analyst. They know how to build dashboards. So that gave rise to all of the masters in data analytics, etc. And they hired the data analyst and say, hey, we need a dashboard. What do you want a dashboard of? And now you're trying to explain to someone the business, because all they know to do is to organize data and build dashboards, right? And so what is happening is, to the tech community, are we really solving the problems, or are we piecemealing the approach to solving the problems? And this is the danger of taking a platform approach to a lot of the technology. Because when you walk into an organization, if I, as a C-suite executive, have to buy 5 SaaS products to put together a coherent picture of what's happening, I have a problem. I'm going to have to log in 5 times. And then how do I get everything together? It's still not solving the problem. So what you're going to see is the rise of AI native companies that take a holistic approach from data to insights. And that's who we are as an organization, Hefty IQ. We took an approach, data to insights. And along our journey, we realized our How do you keep a user engaged using your platform? You have to build new behaviors. How do you build new behaviors? How do the social media app build new behaviors? You need to push insights to the users. And so we're on this journey of getting the insights and pushing it to the users, because it's not natural for humans to ask questions of AI agents. Humans suck at asking questions. We excel at answering questions. And so when you put an interface like ChatGPT in front of a user, they don't know what to ask. Then you said, okay, go to prompt engineering school and learn how to ask questions of the LLM. Right? So you have the stratification of prompt engineering skill sets in an organization, and the value add to the organization is still very much piecemealed. So there's still a lot of problems to be solved. And your approach to solving them requires the context understanding of the persona of an organization and what drives an organization from the board to the C-suite level. I have 3 minutes. I'd love to take some questions if you have questions. Mark.
As the future unfolds, do you see the need for executives to become more technical in order to understand the technological landscape, to position themselves better, to steer the ship based on that technology? Any thoughts there?
No. LLMs have context understanding. I think it's more important for executives to understand the problem to be solved. Right? Why I say that? Tell me if you can see the screen.
Yeah.
Pardon? Okay, right? This is an example of a question I ask. I need a 25% revenue increase by the end of 2025. That's what an executive needs to understand. Do you ask for 25% or 10%? And it goes in, we have a multi-agent platform across a number of domains in an organization, understanding historic trends and giving you the recommendations and building the dashboard without a data analyst, without any technical resources, right? And now I'm asking it, let's look at orders to determine target customers and regions. So now it says, these are the target customers, these are the target regions, etc. From natural language.
Yeah.
But it's important to understand the question to be asked. And that requires the context of the business more than the technical ability.
Yes, so thanks for the presentation. Very, very interesting. I was wondering, could you expound some more on your idea of leveraging time as a strategic asset? What do you mean by that? So concretely, in terms of an example, what does that mean for a business these days? Yeah.
Sure. If you take a look at this question I ask here, I want a 25% lift in revenues, right? Typical executive level question. And this is able to generate this in a few seconds based on the data you have, versus now I have to talk to the chief revenue officer, the chief marketing officer, and do a segmentation analysis of what was sold, who's the target customer, what's the size of the contracts. And there's a lot of follow-on questions that take research, and we said, okay, executive meeting next week, we'll follow up again next week. We task the siloed teams, they get the data together, you go back into the leadership meeting the following week. You make another presentation. What are your recommendations? Let's brainstorm about it. Or let's do an executive off-site retreat and figure this out.
So are you saying instead of wasting time, one has to kind of provide a more holistic view for the business in order to save time? Is that what you're implying, using Gen AI as a tool?
Correct. The ability to get to insights. I call it the cost of insight. The ability. So let me really quickly show you this one feature, because these are real questions. We developed something called an ROI savings dashboard that shows, based on the questions you ask, how much traditional hours it would have taken you to generate that insight, and the savings on time and dollars saved by the response in a few seconds,
Okay, okay, I think I
right?
understand now.
And so it's very easy for us to do a proof of concept. In 7 days, they print this, they take it up to the executive, they sign the contract, and we're done. Because now you have the CFO can ask a question. We're seeing the convergence of CFO positions and COO positions, because CFO needs to understand the operations to make changes to the business to drive the numbers. A good example is Salesforce. They now have a chief CFO, COO.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'll take this last question. I know we're out of time. I'll take this last question. This is a hot topic, hot session.
Really quick and really loudly.
All right, so really good presentation. Thank you. I think my question goes back to the first part of your presentation when you were saying perhaps the implication or impact of AI would be the implication of time, or perhaps the impact or understanding of time changes from one culture to another. I'm wondering if you have done any study, or you have any context in terms of how do you see the impact of AI regarding different cultures, or perhaps other different other parts of the world. Wondering if you have anything on that. Thank you.
Yeah, very, very awesome question, because it's something I think about a lot. What do kids need to do in the age of AI and automation? How do you grow a kid? What is the world they're going to meet, and what's the skill sets they need? And it's really a formulation around understanding the self-awareness and reasoning, right? It now gives the kid the power to create something in the material world from their understanding of their own world and their own intuition, right? So we're going to have a class of builders who are now going to give you. I grew up in Trinidad and Tobago, and you probably don't know there's 20 species of mangoes. Mangoes are native to South Asia, right? We only know one species here, right? A couple stories. Commerce is going to look very different, because the democratization of AI tools is going to fundamentally reshape the world, where the linear time that we live through is now going to be impacted. So you hear people talking about you're going to have more time to yourself to understand what life is about. Now it's moving into the cyclical nature of time, which is very indigenous of, like I said, dharma is life and karma is reincarnation, right? So we're going to get back. I think it's like we're going forward into the past, if I can say that. All right. Connect with me on LinkedIn, please. Let's keep the conversation going. And great conference. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so very much, Herc.